Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
This show does not provide medical advice. If you're having a medical emergency, please call 911. Anything you hear here should be discussed with your primary healthcare provider. Hello and welcome to Everyone Dies, the radio show produced by Passionate World Talk Radio, whose goal it is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. I'm Marianne Masso, and for the next 30 minutes, I am your host. Well, today we have, I don't know if our listeners have noticed, but I tend to get kind of attached to our guests, and I follow what's going on in their lives and have them back, some people repeatedly, to talk about caregiving and these kinds of issues. And we have back today Michael Porter. Mike, how are you?
Doing good, thank you.
Doing good. Now, for those of you who might remember, Mike's wife, Janet, had Huntington's disease, and when we last talked to him, she was receiving hospice support. And I saw on Facebook, which is where I get a lot of my news, that Janet had died. And I want to offer my condolences to you, Mike. And
thank you.
And we talked about that we would kind of talk about that on the radio show, what ultimately happened and what's happened to you since.
Okay. Well, as you said, your lead-in, Janet, her condition started deteriorating rapidly. That the nurse that was the hospice nurse that was seeing her in the house, in our home, thought it looked like she was becoming severely impacted from not being able to go to the bathroom. So they said, well, we need to pick her up, take her into our inpatient facility, get her, freed up, so to speak, and get her stabilized, and she can come back home. Mm-hmm. She was there. They picked her up Friday evening. We got a phone call that night confirming that she'd arrived. They had done whatever procedures they needed to do, and she was, opened back up again, so to speak. And we made arrangements to go see her the next day, Saturday. And so Janet, Franny and I spent most of the day with Janet, sitting with her and not really talking with her because she really wasn't awake. I'm not even sure the extent to which she was aware that we were there. Mm-hmm. But so we had all day Saturday, and then as we were leaving, I told her that we were going. We'll be back, and we would be back the next day. I said, but look, if you get the opportunity to go. Franny and I will be fine. We're taken care of. We'll be good. So if you have a chance to go. And then I got a phone call about 2:35 Sunday morning, saying that Janet had passed about 2:30.
Wow.
And so that was, if you get on my blog, there's pictures. It was funny. She passed on a Sunday morning, the same time that my normal blog post was going up. So, and I already had one set up for a memorial for her, and so I let the normal one, which I had already queued up, I let it go ahead and auto post, and then I posted just to my Facebook followers the memorial, so that it would try to draw some distinction between clarity between the two. But that was January 10th, and I was supposed to start a new job 2 days later. That didn't happen.
That was planned. Because I saw what looked like you had a new job, and did you also move?
Yes, we moved up to Mineral Wells, Texas, which is a beautiful little town. It's about 16,000 people. I mean, this is about as different from Houston as you can get, and it's absolutely glorious up here.
So that move was planned before Janet died, also. Yes.
And it was going to be, everybody was saying she's very near the end, and so we just said, well, we'll take it one day at a time, and if it comes up where we got to figure out how to move Janet up to northern Texas, we'll do that. Give a sense of how long a move that would have been. You could take the state of Pennsylvania and lay it between Houston and where we're at right now, and still have a lot of space on each end.
Wow!
It's about 5.5 hours. It's about a 5.5 hour drive from Houston up to where we are now.
How far are you from the Oklahoma border?
I'm not sure. In the morning when I'm going into work on AM, I can pick up some Oklahoma radio stations.
Mm-hmm.
So I would guess maybe another couple 3 hours, something like that. But it's we're right on Interstate 20. It's a beautiful place. And to give you a sense of how quiet it is, when we lived in Houston, our television, the volume on it was normally set at like 25, 30 on a scale of 0 to 100, right? Mm-hmm. Here, listening to the same TV, listening to the same programming, the volume is set at like 10 or 12.
Wow. I
mean, there's no traffic. There's no sirens going by. There's no motorcycles roaring past, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. And it's been a real blessing for us. One of the things that has sort of been coming up in spades for me is the whole issue of, all right, what do I do now? Not so much on the professional level, because I got my new job, and so that's sort of set out for me. But I mean, on a personal level, what do I do now? The thing that I realized is I was Janet's husband for 35 years, and so I was fairly good at that. But now that job's gone, and what is there for me to do now? And
I wanted to ask you about that, because when we've talked in the past about caregiving, you had said you talked about taking your spouse role and putting in a box when you're the caregiver. And so I was wondering, with Janet's death, do you take out your role as spouse and grieve as her spouse, or is it a grief of your role as caregiver, or does it all get wrapped up in one? How is that, Mike?
Well, actually, it's interesting. Just the other day, I was reading an article, and it was in England, I think. They did a survey, and they did a study with like a couple hundred widows and about 150 widowers, and sort of tracked them, and they found out that within 24 months of the death of their spouse, something like 60 to 70% of the men had remarried. during that same time period, something like 30% of the women had remarried. And as they were doing as they were interviewing people, they were trying to, what explains this difference. And one of the things they came up with was that men and women just fundamentally experience the death of a spouse differently. Mm-hmm. They're saying, and I cannot speak of their observation of women because not being a woman, but I can tell you when I read what they said about men, I said, yeah, that's it. I've been trying to figure out how to express what I was thinking and feeling, and that was it. But what they said was, I'm
dying to know, Mike.
Well, what they said is that women experience the loss of a spouse primarily in the form of relationships. He's not there to talk to anymore. He's not there to cuddle with anymore. He's not there to play cards with, or to just to have a good time, to hang out with. They grieve they miss it primarily in terms of relationships. Men are very different. Men are completely different. While men do experience those sorts of losses, for men, the primary emotion is they experience the death of a spouse like an amputation. Like, I lost my leg. I lost my arm. I mean, there's a part of me that is just missing now, which is a fundamentally different way of, and as I said, when I saw that, I said, yeah, that's it. That's what I've been feeling. And that it's, so it's been sort of working through a lot of that stuff. The things that I've been writing about lately, I've been writing this past week. Sunday. The article was on PTSD, and PTSD as a result of being a caregiver, and I got one particular comment that just I read that and it says, yeah, this is why I do the writing, because this woman's saying, my husband has HD. I've been caring for him for 12 years, and I keep feeling like I have PTSD. I'm experiencing some of those things, but I haven't been raped. I haven't been to war. I haven't been to any of those things, but that's what it feels like. And she says, I thought I was going crazy. And she says, when I read what you wrote, I saw, I'm not crazy. I really can have PTSD as a result of being a caregiver.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then the week before that, I wrote about reentry. As a caregiver who has for weeks, months, years had your life sort of revolving around taking care of one other person. Now that person has gone, and it's like you're considering now, how do I reenter? How do I reenter life? How do I reenter society? How
So how are you doing that, Mike?
Well, the first thing I'm doing is I'm not allowing myself to do what I think I want to do. Okay.
Which is?
You think about it. I mean, most animals, human beings or non-human, you get injured. When they get injured, they want to, cuddle up. They want to find someplace dark and quiet where they can sort of bunker up until they're feeling better. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was a very strong reaction. I just want to find, a nice little house. I want to, if it could be like out in the middle of the country with no telephones, no television, and nothing, electricity. Okay, maybe I need my computer, but then I realized that no, that is not what I'm going to need. Is I need to be out. I need to be involved, and so it's going to church, going to work, meeting people, last Sunday, very sweet lady that I met in the HC support forums. She lives over in the Dallas area, and Franny and I, we met her for dinner after church. To sit around and talk and have a nice dinner and conversation, and it was a wonderful time. And but it's forcing yourself, I guess, is what I did. Is to get out, is to say, my instinctive response, which is to find a hole to crawl into until I'm feeling better, isn't going to work, because what will happen is I'll stay in the hole and I'll never feel better until somebody really does put me in a hole. So that's a large chunk of it, and I've been doing I've been doing a lot of reading and even some additional writing beyond my blog. As I started, is I've actually it was kind of interesting. I just started in the process by just I was listening to some music, and words of a story just started going through my head, inspired by the music. So I just started writing the words down, and it's turned into 2.5 books now.
Wow!
And it's yeah, and what's funny is I didn't even know what it was about. I was 3 weeks into writing on it when I showed it to someone. My sister up in Indiana. I showed it to her, and she says, "Oh, this is about you and Janet." It is. And then I looked at it. It's like, well, yeah, I guess it is. It is. And it's definitely an allegorical fantasy type thing, because the main character, the first other character that he meets in the story is a griffin. So it's half lion, half eagle, and so it's definitely an allegorical story, but it's sort of an allegorical retelling of my life, my story, Janet's story, and sort of going that direction. But it's been an interesting process. And
Did you end up publishing that?
It is. Well, the first 2 books are in various stages of pre-production right now. They're written. They're in the hands of an editor who's going through them.
This isn't just since Janet died, is it?
No. I started on this probably. No, I didn't write that in 3 weeks, in 2.5 months or so.
That's why I was confused. It's like, wait, what?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, well, the thing is I started working on that, and then it just sort of grew. But more specifically, in the point of grieving, that's one of the big things that I noticed after Janet passed, is I got these books from hospice about how to grieve and what it means to mourn and all that kinds of stuff, right? And if Janet had been hit by a bus, or had died, or had a catastrophic heart attack and fallen down dead, they would have been great books. Okay, but when they talked about long-term illnesses, they talked in terms of weeks and months, not years. And it's a very different experience. You're taking care of someone who's slowly dying day by day by day over a period of years. It's a very different experience than
Sure.
And so it's all the steps of grieving get all mixed up and jumbled together, because it goes on for so long that it's like, well, yeah, I'm grieving, I'm feeling the grief and I'm letting go, but then I'm not, and it's just it just gets very complicated. And so that's something I know, and I wrote a post about that as well. Is that when you're dealing with something very long term, like HD, like Alzheimer's, like Parkinson's, it's a very different experience than if as I said, as if your loved one got hit by a bus or something.
Do you find that women are aware of Janet's death and kind of wooing you or bringing you food or things like that?
If they're doing what?
If they're wooing you, like trying to...
Wooing.
Wooing.
Wooing, yes. There have been a couple, yes. There was one. I realized a couple 3 weeks into the whole process that I had reached a milestone of sorts. Is that a friend that I knew, her husband also had HD. She sent me a message. She says, "Oh, I just heard that you moved up to Mineral Wells, and it's really interesting. We have a really good friend that lives up there, and she's such a nice person. And she lost her husband 5 years ago, but she's really, really nice." It's like, okay, people are setting me up now. But there are some folks I've met. One in particular that just a delightful person, and it's just I have not run into like my stepfather. One time he was telling me about when his first wife died before he married my mom. When his first wife died, this gal from church called him, and she says, "I just heard about your wife's passing. I'm so sorry. How about coming over for dinner Friday?" Mm-hmm. And he says, "Well, I can't. I can't come."
That's what I was getting to, because that's very
common.
Yeah.
She says, "How about Friday?" He says, "Well, I can't come Friday." She says, "Why not?" She says, "Friday is her funeral." "Oh, how about Saturday?"
Oh my God.
It was just, it was one of these, relative, forehead slaps, but I have not run into anything anywhere near that. The folks, as I said, I've met, are just very, very nice, and the one lady in particular she's just a wonderful human being. But it's, but no, I have not either. I haven't run into any wooing, or I'm just too dense I'm too dense and out of practice to recognize it.
Well, my husband was a widower, and he had been married for over 40 years, and I had kind of asked him the same thing after we were getting to know each other. He's like, "Oh no, nobody ever," and I'm thinking, you just didn't see it. Because it's extremely rare, for, there's a lot more older women than there are older men. And so,
Yeah, and actually, getting back to that article we were talking about originally, that was one of the other conclusions they came to, was that women are just better prepared emotionally for the loss of a spouse than a husband is, than a man is. And it's the way they put it is that women, they have role models. Their dad died and now their mother's a widow. Their grandfather died and now grandma's a widow. And then they have aunts and all these women that whose husbands have died, and they're saying, "Oh, okay, all right, it's horrible and it's painful, but I can see that it's survivable." Okay.
Well, or you go to restaurants and you see 6 women sitting with one, older guy, and what it is one of those women's husbands has not died, So he goes around and he, with her, and they pick up all of their friends, because they probably were, the men probably were at those luncheons too before they died. And so there's the one guy and the 6 ladies. And that's not uncommon.
Yeah. And it's, in churches, a lot of, country churches still have what they call the widow's corner. It's a group. Yeah, it's a group of pews where ladies whose husbands have died. That's where they all sit together. In one little corner of the sanctuary. And it's typically not formal. It's sort of an informal agreement. Everybody sort of knows that the first 3 rows on the right hand side, if you're male or if you're male and married, you don't sit there. And that's for the widows. But it's one thing that I've discovered in doing the reading is that we're actually getting more and more parity between men and women in terms of numbers of widows versus widowers. They did this again. This I believe it was in England. They did a study over a couple-year period, and they realized that the number of excess women, so to speak, to men is only about 2 to 1. And so which means
still, if you're the one who doesn't have the guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still not exactly good odds, Mike.
Yeah. But it's the kind of thing where it's like you learning to enjoy things again, different things again.
Well, and having some time for yourself, are you finding that that's a big difference?
Yeah.
Because the caregiving was pretty intense, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And it was nice to not have to do anything for a while. But that actually, for me at least, that actually wore off pretty quick. A couple of weeks, and it was like, okay, now I don't have anything to do with my life again, and now I'm getting bored again. What do I do now? And so that sort of, for me at least, that sort of relaxation of, wow, I don't have to worry about taking care of them anymore, that wore off real fast for me. I don't know what it would be like for anyone else, but and then it's finding other things, part of it is, we were moving here, so I had to find a house, and then we moved in, and the night we arrived, we walk in and we see there was no washer and dryer, which I knew about. Walked in the kitchen, also found out there was no refrigerator, which I didn't know about.
Oh no!
So it's like now we don't have any place to keep food cold. So, but luckily that was just before the big cold snap they had up here. So, our the back seat of our car became the freezer. Our garage was our refrigerator because it was closer to the house, and so it didn't get quite as cold. And and so we were able to get by for a week or so until we were able to get a refrigerator. But it was but so there's that. There's getting all that stuff set up, buying furniture that we had given away in Pearland, because when Janet got bad, she couldn't make it upstairs, so we got a hospice set us up with a hospital bed, which we put in our living room, which means the easy chair had to go away, the sofa had to go away, and so it was reacquiring some of those sorts of things. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, just to sort of keep you busy and keep
and plus getting used to a new job and
community. Yeah. And the job has been great. It's the first job I've ever had where I walked in the door and my boss said, "Look, the software that we have right now, we know stinks. It's horrible. Just write whatever it is we need. Just fix it. Just make, start with a clean piece of paper and write what we need.
Wow.
So I mean, that's been that was a very nice situation.
Cool.
Because
how's Brandy doing with all this?
Actually, she's doing well. She's her boyfriend flew up from Houston last weekend, so she had a couple days with him, and then she went out to dinner last Sunday with this lady and myself, and she had a ball. She's a really nice lady, and so it's she's doing well. I think she's doing well, but a large chunk of this just keeps coming back to the whole question of faith. Is that in some ways grief, being a caregiver for someone with long-term illness is in some ways is like being an alcoholic. I mean, it's a problem that is bigger than you. You can't solve it by yourself. You can't do it effectively by yourself. You need support. You need support that's bigger than you. And in the AA community, they talk about their higher power, that kind of thing. And something else I've been doing is there's a little local radio station, KATX, here in the area, and every morning between about 8:30 and 9 o'clock, they schedule guests to come in and talk about like community improvement and how to plan for your retirement and all those sorts of things. And I was listening to that, and I said, this is a very rural area, and that one of the local hospitals was just bragging about, hey, we got a nephrologist now. So if you have a problem with your kidneys, you don't have to drive to Fort Worth anymore. And so I kept thinking, well, it's very likely they don't have neurologists, social workers, people who are knowledgeable about some of these diseases. And so I called up the radio station. I said, hey, this is where I'm at. My wife just passed away from this condition called Huntington's disease. And it might be worthwhile to have like a half hour for me to come in and just talk to me, and we can talk about how to deal with it. And the guy said, sounds like a great idea. So I came in, we did that, and that was like last Friday. And Friday morning, I was on the radio, and it went so well. The guy
you're already stepping out on me, is what you're telling me.
Well, the guy on the radio says, hey, while we were on the air, he said, hey, why don't you come on back? And we continued the conversation. But it worked well. It worked out. It was really kind of neat. And in case anybody's interested, KATX is the radio station. They're 97.7. They're a small little station, but they have a live streaming link. So on April 9th, 8:30 in the morning, Texas time.
You're going to get your own show. You know that.
Well, I don't know about that yet, but
I'm just warning you that that's what's going to happen.
Thank you. But as I said, April 9th, 8:30 in the morning, Texas time. Look up KATX, and you can. They have a button on their website where you can listen to a live stream of whatever they're broadcasting right at that moment, and you can tune in, you can listen. But yeah.
So now that you've got another radio station, are you still going to come back and talk to us?
Absolutely. I mean, the pay is great.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Because the next thing we're going to want to know is about your love life. So, you got to get working on that, Michael. Well,
okay.
Thanks for spending some time with me and talking with me about this. And we're just, very nosy about your life and want to know what's going on. So I offer you, our condolences regarding Janet's death. But
Thank you.
You strike me as a very resilient man of many talents. So I'm looking forward to see what happens next. Yeah. And I'm going to thank our listeners for spending time with me during our show, Everyone Dies. You can read our blogs and listen to our podcast at everyonedies.org. Thank you to our producer, Jeannie White, and our CEO, Lillian Caldwell. We produce a new show every Wednesday to answer questions related to life-threatening illness, dying, and death. Remember, you can listen to Passionate World Radio on Spreaker and our shows wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like to discuss on our show, please email Marianne at everyonedies.org. That's MARIANNE at EVERY1dies.org. I hope that you live your best life every day, and remember, every day is a gift. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the Internet.